So today we're actually gonna do a really non-sexy topic, but it's something that I hear questions asked about a lot, and this is so important, especially if you're a wedding photographer. You need to make sure that your storage is rock solid, and you don't want to be out here losing wedding photos and having to explain to your clients that your SD card got corrupted and you don't have a backup, things like that, like really scary stuff. So you definitely don't want that. So we're going to be talking about my system, how I shoot wedding days, what kind of memory cards I use, how I back up my files in multiple ways, kind of like how I edit and my whole process for delivering, and then the file and storage side of it. So not just not really talking about the editing side, but more like the file storage through the editing process. So hope this is really practical and helpful for you. If you do like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Make sure to click the subscribe button below. I'm also going to link all this gear that we talk about in this video in the description down below. So if you want to get any of it, you definitely can. Without further ado, let's get to it. I've got my amazing photography bag. This is not a what's in my bag video, but this is important to know because this goes into my process of how I photograph weddings, how I back up my images. So I'm taking out my camera to show you, and also my memory card holder. I'm also taking out my hard drive to show you as well. Put the camera bag away. We have the 3 essential elements out here on the desk. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is that I shoot with the Canon Mark IV, so 5D Mark IV, and it's not mirrorless. Mirrorless is all the rage right now. I don't have a mirrorless camera. Love the 5D Mark IV. I don't have a specific reason for not going mirrorless. I just don't. So, who's to say? I might upgrade in the future, but love the Mark IV. I think it's great. And in the Mark IV, there's a dual memory card slot, so you probably can't see it. Let's see if I can pull this forward a little bit so you can see now. There is a CF card, so this is what a CF card looks like. It's a lot bigger than an SD card, which is probably what you're more familiar with. And then there's also an SD card slot, and that one is a really small, really easy to have. It's an SD card. This is probably what you're more familiar with when you think of memory cards. So I have 2 different types of memory cards. I know for the mirrorless cameras, they have just 2 SD cards, a lot of them do. I actually prefer that there's 2 different types of memory cards. In my mind, it makes me think that they're less likely to corrupt if they're 2 different kinds. So it's an SD card, and then it's a CF card. Do not ask me what the difference is. I have no idea. I just know one is bigger, and they probably write in different ways because the hardware is different on them. But other than that, I don't know what the difference is. So that's the first fail-safe I have. I always make sure I have them both in my camera. Now the next fail-safe that I have for my file protection, file organization, is that you always want to make sure that you format the memory cards before you use them. That's a setting on your camera. I'll put a screen grab of that setting here on my Canon so you can just see what it looks like. But you always want to make sure, well, first check and make sure that the photos that are on the memory cards are okay to be cleared. Formatting wipes all the images off the camera, basically starts you fresh. If you don't do this, it's more likely to corrupt, so make sure you do that. My next fail-safe is that I do change out memory cards quite frequently. Maybe every year or so. I don't really have a hard and fast rule for how often I change these out. I definitely do change out SD cards more than I do CF cards. CF cards are a lot more expensive. You also want to make sure, this is just a side note, bonus if you will, that the write speed on the write, so not R-I-G-H-T, but W-R-I-T-E, the write speed on your SD card or your CF card is as high as possible. So this one is 170 megabits per second. I'm preferential to the SanDisk Extreme Pro. Again, I'll link all of that in the description, but I think they're the absolute best. I think the fastest on the market is a little bit higher than that, but I think the fastest maybe at the market at the time that I got this was 170 megabits. The next tip that I have for you is that I typically don't shoot on higher than a 64 gigabyte card. The reason for that being, obviously there's more storage you can get on SD cards nowadays. You could probably get up to 2 terabytes, I think, on an SD card, which is kind of crazy. I shoot on 64 gigabyte cards specifically, and for actual reason. It's not just because it's cheaper. It is because if, for some reason, God forbid, something were to happen and this memory card were to fail, Well, I typically go through 2 of these in a wedding day. So if this one were to fail, and let's say my backup one were also to fail, which would be an absolute nightmare and hopefully would never happen, knock on wood. But if that were to happen, then I would still have, hopefully, the other memory card with the other 64 gigabytes still viable. So that's just like another safety feature for me. I don't want to have too many photos on one card just in case it does fail. Lastly, the thing about SD cards is that I want to make sure they're always protected. So I have this case that I carry with me to weddings, and I have 6 SD cards on this side, 3 CF cards on this side. Whenever I'm done using an SD card, I turn it around so that the label is toward the back, so I know that it's used, and that's kind of how I organize it. So once I format a card, I make sure to put it back in the regular upright position so I know it's ready to be used. Here's what you should do to protect the files and make sure that they're good to go all the way through the editing process and all the way to gallery delivery day. So first of all, after a wedding, I always upload all the photos from my memory card to my hard drive. And the hard drive that I have is the Lacy portable 2 terabyte hard drive. It is an HDD and not an SDD. So an SDD is a solid state. If you were to like throw it or toss it on the ground or drop it on the ground, this would be more likely to break or malfunction. A solid state would be less likely to break or malfunction. I have this one, it's been great. It has this bumper on it. Again, knock on wood, I have not dropped it or anything. I also have a case for it, which I'll link down below as well. But whenever it's not being used, it's always in this case, just as an added protection. I have 2 of these, so after I come home from a wedding day, I make sure to upload all the images to at least one or both of these, and then I name it and put it in a raw file folder. I'm not clearing the actual SD cards with the original photos on them until after I've delivered the gallery, so weeks away. So just as an added protection, even though I put all the files on here, and maybe even another hard drive, I still don't want to delete it from here. Until you have delivered the gallery, the client has gotten it, you have essentially 4 copies of these images, which is going to make it a lot less likely that you're going to lose them or they're going to get destroyed, which I'm all about having safety features. So if, I'm all about having safety features. So if you have 4 copies of these images, it's highly unlikely that something's going to go wrong on all 4 of these devices. I also make sure that I am culling and editing from the hard drive. This will typically make the process go a lot faster. If you want an editing video or like a culling video, the process on the back end, definitely leave a comment down below and I will put together a video of that for you guys, because that's definitely a whole other process. Editing and culling from the hard drive instead of from the SD card is an absolute game changer. And last but not least, this is another hot topic question I get asked a lot, is how long do you keep your raw files? And for me personally, I keep raw files pretty much forever. I didn't always do that, but since about 2 years ago, I've kept raw files pretty much like extensively forever. I don't advertise that, so I don't tell my clients that I keep raw files. I actually tell them that I purge my hard drive like every month or so, and I think that's good because they shouldn't expect that you're going to keep the raw files, but for me, I like to keep them just as a personal preference. I don't think you have to. That's my personal preference though. But I definitely do keep a copy of my edited gallery on my hard drive. Of course, the client also has the online gallery, so you know, that's stored in the cloud. There's probably nothing that's going to happen to that, but just in case, I do have a copy on my hard drive of all the edited files. I hope that video is helpful and kind of just walk you through the process of what I do to protect images when I'm shooting a wedding day and after I'm shooting a wedding day, all the way up until the gallery delivery time. Again, I'll leave all this gear in the description, so if you want to buy any of the SD cards that I use, the CF cards, the Lacy hard drive, or even the SD card holder that I love, it'll all be linked below for your shopping pleasure. Until the next video, I will see you guys later. Bye!